Welcome back to another reading wrap-up. Let's talk about all the books that I read in March through May. As always, I typically get my books from the library, so you will not be seeing physical copies of them. Also, I don't give like a star rating because, I don't know, I'm a feeling mood reader, but I do tell you all of my thoughts and opinions on these books. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, these are the books that I read this spring were a bit like all over the place, so there should be something in here for everyone. First book that I read was Chain of Gold. It is the first book in this series, I believe The Last Hours by Cassandra Clare. So, heard the name Cassandra Clare, you know. This is a Shadowhunter book. I believe this is like going to be her last series in this very expansive Shadowhunter universe. Chain of Gold takes place in Victorian England, so we have fancy dresses, we have balls, but also they slay demons. That is what basically hooked me. So this story follows the kids of the Clockwork Angel series. It's this ragtag group of kids who haven't really seen much danger in terms of shadow hunting, just a demon here or there. Then all of a sudden, the demons ramp up and they're like, what do we do now? With this book, I was really hooked in the beginning. I loved the setting. I just came off of watching Lockwood and Co., so I really wanted something similar to that vein, and I thought this would be perfect for it. Then, my only rub is it wasn't necessarily the book that I wanted. There were so many things. I'm not gonna spoil it, but there were so many. When the book starts, I thought it was gonna go a different way than it did. And then, if you know Cassandra Clare, this really is not a spoiler if you've ever read any books, but if you haven't read any books from her, click ahead or silent this. But she always throws in a love triangle, and I just would have preferred it to have been a different love triangle than it was. I don't even know if that makes sense. It might just be a me thing, but also aside from that, there was a lot of the book, like it's a thick book, and there was a lot of stuff that I just felt we didn't need to happen. It felt like we had an ending and then there was another problem that obviously, because that's a series, but there was just one of the plot lines that are then going to lead you into the next books, it seemed. I was just not about, like, I really did not like this character. It was such a frustrating plot line that I don't think I'm going to continue on with the series. If you are an avid Shadowhunters fan, though, I'm sure you would like it just to see where the characters end up, but I would have preferred it basically being about the sister, if we're being honest, and then having her kill everything. But yeah, this, if you've read the book, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about with this one very frustrating plot line that I feel like could be solved if people would just talk to each other. But I don't know. Okay, anyway, moving on. The next book that I read was Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is her latest installment of her interconnected storylines in the same universe. So this Carrie Soto is Back is about a retired tennis player named Carrie Soto who a younger tennis star is about to break her record. And Carrie cannot have that. She comes out of retirement to break her own record in order to keep her title. is the goal. And she has her dad as her tennis instructor. This basically is a story for not only sports fans, but anyone who loves an underdog, anyone who loves a comeback story. This is your perfect, in a box, here you are, underdog comeback story. There's heart, there's drama, there's drive, there's ups and there's downs. It's just, Carrie is a very unlikable character, but I never disliked her. It was just, yeah, okay, maybe you don't make the same choices that I would, but there was always like a reason. You could see the reason behind why she made the choices that she did. It's very, very solid story that at the end of the day is very heartwarming. I feel like if you're going to read any of the books that I have read in this wrap up, my recommendation would be Carrie Soto is back. The next two books that I read are books that were mentioned in my spring book haul of books to help you romanticize spring. So if that interests you, you could go back and take a look at those. So the first one is Nightshade for Warning by Bailey Cottrell. Now this is your perfect little cozy mystery. This was actually the first cozy mystery that I have ever read. I like watching them on Hallmark, but I never actually read one. But I have to say, is it cheesy? Yeah. But it wasn't as, like, I was expecting it to be kind of hard to read and where it's just like easier just to watch on a movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Nightshade for Warning is about this girl named Eliana who owns a perfume shop called Sense and Nonsense. And then behind the perfume shop, she has like this garden that's a little mystical, a little enchanted, and she lives in a tiny house behind the shop through the garden. And so it reminded me a lot of, if you've ever seen the show Good Witch or the movies Good Witch on Hallmark Channel, where it's like they don't come outwardly and say it, but you know there's like magic flowing underneath the surface and that she's got a little something something. Anyway, so basically in this book there is a journalist who is supposed to be coming to do an interview on her about her tiny house and her garden. So then her brother and her brother's girlfriend make a surprise visit, and then they go out to dinner where they run into this supposed journalist who turns out to be a jerk. And then there is like confrontation that happens between the journalist and the brother's girlfriend. Then later, the journalist ends up dead, and they're pinning it on the brother's girlfriend. So you can see our main character, Eliana, gets involved, obviously, and tries to solve this case and clear her brother's girlfriend's name. And that's where the story takes us, and we see what happened, who killed him, why did they kill him, all while there's like little bits of just like heartwarming goodness because it's a cozy mystery. So yes, there's death, but there's nothing, it's like a cozy death. The next book that I read also for the spring, from the spring book haul video, was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now this is again when I was just in my fantasy. I'm still trying to find a fantasy book or fantasy series that I can really like sink into and be super invested in and enjoy. So if you have any recommendations, please let me know or convince me to continue this series. Please and thank you. Anyway, if you don't know, The Cruel Prince, but you probably already do know because it has been everywhere, is about this girl named Jude who was kidnapped with her sisters into the land of Fae, which are fairies, when they were very young, and then were raised by this man who kidnapped them. And the whole time, Jude and her sister, who are mortal, have always been looked down upon and were deemed lesser because they were not Fae and they didn't have all the abilities that Fae children have. So they were like heavily bullied. And all Jude has ever wanted is to be equal, if not better, than the people who tormented her. And her main bully is Prince Carden, who is the youngest son of the High Elf King. I don't know, how do I say this? Jude then finds herself mixed up in a whole bunch of different political intrigue, and she discovers some secrets underlining of the kingdom. And in order to obtain what she has always longed for, she's going to have to realizes that she is going to have to defy some of those that she cares about and become very bloodthirsty in her own right. And that's kind of where the story takes us, and pretty much all I want to tell you. With otherwise, I will tell you everything. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on, a lot of deception and back and forth, manipulation amongst these characters, because they're also these fairies are very much fairies, where they are tricky. And think about like Puck from A Midsummer's Night's Dream. They're always going to, you can never fully believe anything that they say. Even though they can't lie, they're gonna tell you it in a way that it's kind of like a riddle. It was definitely better than Chain of Gold. What was the other book that I read? Oh, it was right. It's definitely better than Chain of Gold, in my opinion. But I don't know why, I just have not felt the desire to pick up the second book and to continue it on, even though I know so many other people loved it. If you've read it and you love it, please convince me to keep reading it and tell me why I should. So the next book that I read is also a book that I have seen pretty much everywhere. It is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This is a romance novel. So this book is about a young girl who just graduated from college, Bree, who runs away to a small town in Maine. There she runs into this guy named Archer, who just throughout their whole interaction did not say anything to her, and she couldn't peg him, be like, what is wrong with him? Did I do something? And everything. And then she later talks to all the townspeople, and they're like, oh no, stay away from Archer. Like, it's this whole mystery around, well, what's going on with Archer. A lot of people don't trust him, don't like him. He doesn't speak to anyone. They rarely ever see him come to town. And there's some other situation that she has to try to unravel to figure out, well, who is this guy? What happened to him? I don't know. He was nice to me when I met him, so I wasn't afraid of him. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And so this sparks Bree's intrigue. And so then she keeps running into him because she is looking for him, basically. And then it's all about basically their love story and how the two of them come together, and then also dealing with the town and their previous notions about who they assumed Archer was, and then kind of rewriting that. I thought it was a very sweet story. I will say though, about I want to say a third into it, it gets very hot and heavy for a few chapters that are just it was one after the other after the other. I'm we just didn't need that. We could have cut some out. So you kind of just have to get through that point of it. And then there was another section where at first I thought it was going to go one way, that I was completely okay, I'm just going to not continue. I almost put it down. I'm glad I didn't, but I almost DNF'd it because it got to this one point and I'm if it's just going to continue to go this way, then I'm done. I don't really care anymore. But thankfully it kind of got out of that situation, and then it was better. It rewrote itself better. It's not my favorite romance love story that I've ever read. but I know a lot of people do love it. If you love a like super soft, quiet boy, you will love this book. You will eat this book up. And then the last book that I read was a thriller called The Last to Vanish by Megan Miranda. Now, I had read one previous book by Megan Miranda before, like a while back. I believe it was called something like The Last House Guest or something. It was on Reese's book club, and I thought that one was very good. It was very suspenseful, had a lot of twists that I didn't necessarily see coming. I loved the setting. It was at a beach house. This book, on the other hand, was not amazing. It was kind of let down. So it takes place in this town in the mountains along the Appalachian Trails in North Carolina. And this town is kind of known or like associated with missing people, because there were 3 occurrences of people vanishing from either the trail or the town itself. And then everything gets stirred back up when someone else goes missing. Now, these people have been missing, and there has never been any evidence of their bodies ever being found. So no one knows what happened to these people. And there's this huge kind of like us against them mentality of the people who have grown up and lived in this town versus those who have just moved there, or the visitors. We have a lot of visitors coming solely for the mystery of it all. And then once this latest person vanishes, we have their brother comes to town and hopes to try to put some pieces together. And then when he starts stirring things up, we have our main protagonist, Abby, who, once you get into a few of the chapters, then Abby kind of joins in and trying to figure out what actually happened to all of these people who went missing. Like, is there this bigger thing that's happening, or is it truly just that they got lost in the woods? And I have to say, like, the setting, it was super eerie, but it just never really did anything. Like, I feel like the ending was the ending was predictable, but also not enough, and you never really, like, I guess you did get the information, but the ending was not satisfying, I'll just say. I felt like I was just getting through the book, and then I got to the ending, and I was like, oh, okay. And with that, those are all the books that I read in spring, this past spring, all the way from March through May. I think I like doing it better this way, as in a whole season of books, because I'm not a super fast reader, as you guys can tell, so that way you get more books and it gives me more to talk about, and we can all put them together. I did just place a whole bunch of books on hold at the library for when those come in, so we got a lot of books to read this summer. But let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books, or what was your favorite book that you read during springtime. Also, if there's any books that you recommend that I should read soon, or over the summer, or even months ahead, please let me know. I would always love to hear others' recommendations. And thank you so much for watching, and I shall catch y'all in my next video.